Hi, everybody, and welcome to what is the first Shed Life of 2022. And I have to confess to being slightly nervous about this one. So I have a very special guest with me who I don't know. So I have no idea what's going to happen. So it could be quite interesting. And if I tell you what Duncan does, and I'll get to his intro in a minute, even more so because he is self-professed master of influence and persuasion. So heaven knows what I'll be doing by the end of this. But why is this important at the moment? Well, as we kind of tip through into 2022, we can all see the challenges ahead of us. And as leaders, business owners, people who just want to learn and develop our skills, influence and persuasion are absolutely critical, aren't they? So they will be continued importance for us, whether it's our retaining clients, attracting clients, influencing new people to come and work with us, hopefully influencing change, because I know many of you who listen to these also are involved in the business of transformation and change as well. So Duncan Stevens joins us today, and he has recently written a book, which I haven't yet read, but I look forward to doing so. So welcome, Duncan, to today. In your opinion, what is the most important skill any leader can have, and does influence differentiate a leader from a manager?
Yeah, so I think you're right with your introduction. Now more than ever, kind of the mindset has changed on how we influence people, certainly with the pandemic. And where once we used to kind of want to go straight in for the jugular and start selling things, now we need to think more about a more collaborative approach to leadership or managing or whatever you want to call it. So if you have somebody who, I suppose, has been battered and bruised and hungry and cold from the pandemic, metaphorically speaking, we don't want to start selling them cookery courses. Instead, we want to put our arm around them, keep them warm, give them some food in their belly, and then start talking to them about what's next. And I think that mindset of a collaborative approach is much more important now than it ever has been. But in terms of a manager and a leader, often people have been promoted into, let's say, a manager. We've got lots of books, 60-Minute Manager, How to Become a Manager. But really, when you get promoted into these positions, do you ever really know what do I need to do to become a manager? And if you think about the word manager by itself, it's simply managing or firefighting, or to some extent coping. So if you were to say to your manager, husband or wife, what are you doing today? I'm off going managing. While you're off coping, firefighting. Is that really the way to be as a leader? And I don't think it is. I think, having spoken to lots of leaders around the world, leadership comes from that more broader perspective as in that overseeing the operations. And the difference between the two, I would say, is the aim. What is the aim for that leader? And the aim, I would say, from my experience, is to have those managers becoming self-managers. So you can do the more strategic elements of leadership, I would say.
And so if as we say, it's incredibly important for leaders, what techniques do you think are the most important techniques in influencing other people? I'm saying this very cautiously because I know later on you're going to try and have a go at some of this with me. But what techniques would you say generally?
So as you kind of say, I do demonstrations. They're somewhat there are entertainment elements to them, but I think there's no kind of little secret bullet or special little gizmo or something you can do to influence. Essentially, influencing comes back to a lot of the very basic principles of humanity, which is empathy, collaboration, and being a leader is being open, being vulnerable. And if you have that invites people to seek your advice. But I think perhaps the one thing links that we could use in terms of influence is by tapping into one of Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion, and that is reciprocity. Reciprocity is, if you give to somebody, then they're likely to give back, often greater. Okay. However, with that, people are influenced in different ways or have different needs, I suppose. So as a manager or a leader, shall we say, I think it's fundamentally important to have on your wall a list of your employees or teammates or whatever you want to call them. And alongside of those, have the different things which motivates them or would inspire them. So for example, if you were to reward, I don't know, Janet, she might have 2 children who she wants to have an extra half an hour to go and pick her children up from school. Bob, he might like a bottle of champagne. Whereas equally, I don't know, Sue, she might not drink. So you wouldn't give her the same kind of incentive. However, if you have a list of all of these and what inspires them, what incentivizes them, and you can tailor it accordingly, then I think you would get more back in return. In fact, I did a study, or my team did a study, and that looked at, I don't know, I think we looked at about 200 or 300 people and researched what incentivizes them. And out of all of the different things, maybe a bottle of champagne, it might be extra time, maybe a big fat check or something like that. The number one thing that came up out top, 80% of people said a handwritten note from the CEO. A handwritten note from the CEO. And why is that? If you link it to the power of persuasion, is because to some extent it'll be unexpected, but it'll also be personalized. A personalized handwritten note. And you can read so much more about handwritten notes and post-it notes, and you can get digital post-it notes, but even then, something like that is just a powerful tool, as just one tool.
So you're talking here, as I hear you speak, it's an awful lot about understanding, listening, adapting, and showing genuine care, I suppose, really. And if you think about empathy, and I think it's probably Brené Brown that refers to this, she talks about empathy as being truly caring and trying to put yourself in somebody's shoes, as opposed to being sympathetic, which is feeling sorry for them. And you can only really do the influence, I think, is what you're saying, if you are in their shoes, understanding them and adapting what you're doing. And that will generate trust, I guess, which then leads to influence.
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. A perfect quote as well. So yeah, for that, ARE, appreciation, recognition, and encouragement. Those 3 factors together. Yeah, absolutely. And taking that.
Just reminded me of a book called Crave, which also talks about those things as well as being a really key way to help enable motivation as well. So it's clearly based on quite a lot of research. It makes a lot of sense to me. You've spent at least 15 years in this territory. You've worked with a lot of leaders. Who stands out to you and why? And I'm guessing it will be because they exhibit some of the things you've talked about there.
Well, this one's a fun one. The reason it's a fun one is because in my keynotes, I ask the same question. I ask, name this person, if this person, give a round of applause, and everybody has their different viewpoints of what is the best leader. And I don't know if it's cliche or not, but it's somewhat documented already. But it is, of course, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I don't know if you ever come across that as an analogy for the best leader.
No.
So Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, if you've seen it, a great classic movie, you see her, the way that she takes 3 people to go to the Emerald City. So she's got a very clear aim in mind that she needs to go to the Emerald City. But as part of that, there's a lot of adversity that she's got to face. And as part of that adversity, if she was to travel to the Emerald City by herself, she probably wouldn't have got there because of the things the witch did to her, etc., etc. But as part of getting there, she was helped. And that helping, or yeah, I suppose help. She helped the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man, both with their respective courage, brain, and heart. But equally so, they helped her. And it kind of links back to this collaborative approach to leadership. And I don't want that to sound kind of twee, collaborative approach, but I think it's important. And linking back to, like I said, about how you influence and the leadership qualities, having this two-way loop from your team, not just a closed loop as in, oh, give us some feedback, oh, it'll end here. Give us some feedback and react on that feedback. No matter how rubbish it is, someone might say, oh, I don't like the color of the brand. Of course, you're not going to change it from blue to red, but you can't dismiss it, because out of all of that, you get something called stacking. And stacking is essentially the culmination of all parts make that one thing better and bigger.
Yeah.
It's used in retail. I'm not sure it's used so much in leadership, but yeah. So for me, I have an effective influence model, and as part of that, many of the characteristics in that do tick so many boxes from what happens with Dorothy as the perfect leader. I've done a whole workshop, half-day workshop, all about Dorothy and her leadership qualities and how you can draw out of those so many things for your own leadership benefit.
I'm fascinated as to what gave you that idea, actually, because that is quite unique. So where did that come from?
So that came from many years ago. So maybe I was probably about 15, 16, 17. And I'm sure, like you, when you go to events, you'll hear lots of speakers talk about different things, but then there'll just be one thing which really stands out, one thing that will stay with you forever. And I was having this, I forget what it was, but it was a presentation, and everybody stood up. They were all young. I was in the Navy, young officers. And everybody said, oh, you've got 5 minutes to present on the best leader. And everybody came up and said, oh, Hitler, oh, you can't say that. Or you might have Gorbachev, oh, you can't say that. Or, all people. And there was always a difference of opinion, as there is now when I ask audiences around the world. There's always a difference of opinion because people have different views on what they believe leadership or good leadership should be. This guy come up, he was probably younger than me. He was probably, I don't know, maybe only 16. And he blew me away just talking about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So eloquently, so beautiful. I put it to bed, and I was really touched by it. Fast forward however many years, and as I spoke more and more around the world and I developed my effective influence model, I remembered that and linked it back, and I thought, yeah, that was all correct. And the more I looked into it, the more you can dig deep into it, even to the point of where you look at courage from the lion is something that we all need to have. And I think I did write a quote from this: courage, what it takes to stand up, courage and speak, and equally have to have courage to what it takes to sit down and listen. That was something from Winston Churchill, a powerful little nugget there. But you link into that courage with the brain that you need and the heart or the love, which I suppose we've been talking about, again, not wanting to make it too twee for leaders, but there has to be that openness, that empathy with your team, alongside the brain or the academic ability as a leader. Yeah,
absolutely. It's all about people, though, isn't it? I mean, somebody said to me recently, are you a psychologist? I was like, no, of course I'm not. And they said, but so much of what you have to do in your job is understanding people. And it's true. It's true. And recognizing difference and really appreciating and getting under the skin of that difference does allow effective influence in my limited experience of this compared to yours. So this is the bit that I didn't want to do. Give us a little demo of what you do, because I know you do this on a very serious track, but you do it for fun as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was going to do something bigger, but I think we'll just keep it simple for now. So just with a deck of cards, we'll just keep it simple so that we don't have to over worry or overcomplicate things. But if I was to ask you to think of a color, red or black, what would you say?
Black.
Would you say a diamond, a club or a spade?
Club.
A number or picture?
A number.
What number?
8.
So the 8 of clubs, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about people before. And one of the things that I always like to say is one of the most predictable things about people is the fact they believe they're unpredictable. By default, it makes them predictable. So I do this with not just playing cards, but other things. And certain people would draw certain things by thinking they're going to be unpredictable. But you've come up with the 8 of clubs, is that right? Yeah, was that right? Yes. 8 of clubs, yeah. Now there's one card face down inside of here. You can absolutely stick with that, or you can absolutely change. I'm committed to it. It's not some magic trick or anything like that.
I will stick.
The 8 of clubs, yes?
Yes.
But I show you this super fair, super slow. I keep it slow and I keep it fair. I go through. There should be one card. You see it there, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
No funny moves or anything like that. That card again?
Yeah.
The 8 of clubs, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Check it out. The 8 of clubs.
You should do this for a living. That's very good. You do know I now want to know exactly how you did that. I have a theory, but I won't get into it right now. But I won't rest until I know how you did that. But well done, seriously. So I mean, I guess there's an element of this, isn't there, of the Darren Browns about it. I haven't watched any Darren Brown stuff for a long time, but you're picking up on little clues. So it's not just listening, it is really trying to observe the person in what you see and what you hear, and I guess what you can perceive that's going on in their head. Does that take a long time to learn how to do that, or is it straightforward?
It's not straightforward. But it's something that I think the best way I could describe it, as we spoke about before, is listening. So a lot of people, managers, leaders, other people, we listen with a different level of intent. This is just talking about listening. So most people listen to reply with their question.
Yeah.
The best leaders, the best team members, whoever, they listen to understand. If they listen to understand what that person needs, not wants, it's a bit more tricky with that. And then you fine tune that part of your, let's say, influencing ability, then you can kind of skyrocket it a bit more. You take that same amplification with the way people behave, let's say the way or where ladies wear rings on their fingers, or little micro expressions, or all other little things. You mix it all in together, and then you can apply things like that. I'd love to hear your explanation on that, how that works.
Completely wrong. And it also comes from the base of being quite cynical as well. But for anybody watching this, genuinely, that was for real. We hadn't agreed that beforehand. So we're coming to the end of our time on this. What one technique, and you've probably touched upon this already, but what one technique can really leave our listeners improving their ability on this? If they just really started to improve one thing and really thought about one thing, what would it be? I'm
going to give you a tool, let's say, or a way to think about improving your ability as a leader. And that is something called an ABC test. Have you ever heard of this? ABC test?
Not necessarily. Keep going.
So ABC test. So let's say you want to be a leader. We're not talking a better leader. We're talking not really talking about influence now, but a better leader.
Yeah.
ABC. So the first thing you want to do is get a piece of paper and write it down. Don't type it up because you won't commit to it as much. But put an A on the top. This is where you are now as a manager or a leader, or whatever you want to call yourself. This is all the things that you see yourself as right now, right here, right now. That's A. Then you want to do B. What you want to be as a leader, the best things you want to be as a leader, the traits we've talked about now, which could inspire your team to be more than they are, and collaboratively inspire your company or your organization to be greater than they are, and in turn reflect better on you. That's the B. Then you've got the 2, then just write, again, you're writing down 2 separate places. And then of course the C. The C is what you need to go from that A to the B. You make a note of those and then take time out to self-appraisal, I suppose, assess where you're going with that. If we did more of that, then that's more self-development, I suppose, for ourselves. And we've got ourselves accountable for that as well.
Yeah. And that's so simple, isn't it? But I guess what I take from that is be purposeful about it, and just taking the time out to reflect and focus on it will make a bigger difference than doing something complicated and difficult. Just focusing and being purposeful.
Absolutely. The same with influence, just to kind of close, because that's a perfect point, just to close. Influence, as I said, there's no secret magic bullet, but just something simple as reciprocity of just being normal, just being human, just being connectable with that other person. There's no magic thing about it. It's just, if that person needs to leave a bit earlier to pick their children up, they'll repay that generosity or empathy or kindness from you 100-fold. And that's not magic thing. It's just remembering that is a powerful form of influence, So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So we always ask this when we speak to individual experts, nothing to do with influence here, but just general question. What 3 words, in your opinion, describe a great leader?
Authentic.
Yeah.
Empathetic. And a reactive listener, which is different to an active listener, which is different to a listener. Is a listener who's going to act upon things said. That's like those two words, those three words, one's hyphenated. But
slightly cheating. There is a missing word though for reactive listener. I bet somebody in some language somewhere has a word for that, and there'll be a country that's really good at it. So that's interesting. And finally, you've already given us one great quote today, but have you got any other quotes or mottos that you live by?
I do live by one quote, but it's not really leadership. It's not really influence, but it's just something which I really like. And that is, the most beautiful things in life are the ones we take for granted. And it's very true. Very, very true. And you've just made me think of the bird song during the early lockdowns in the pandemic. Just the joy of hearing the birds sing, and most of the time we don't even notice, we take it for granted. Brilliant, thank you so much. And we're now going to end so you can tell me how you did that card trick. But thank you so much for joining us, Duncan, and obviously we'll leave details at the end of this about how people can get in touch with you and get hold of the book and all the rest of it as well. But thank you so much for your time.
All right, thanks for having us, it's been fun. Thanks so much.